Yamazaki nodded in silent agreement.
捕獲はすでに済まされた事柄です。その結果に不満を述べるつもりはありません。お前ら殊勝な奴らだね。それに引き換え掃除は。
It didn't seem Najikura was going to let Ikeda get away without rubbing his mistake in his face. Both Kai Shimada and Suzumu Yamazaki serve as Shinzengumi officers and spies under Hijikata. Aside from the captains who stay in the Yagi residence, they are some of the few people entrusted with the knowledge of my situation. In other words, these men are highly valued officers within the organization. Despite their resounding support, I felt a rush of guilt sweep over me, and I spoke up. I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. Some Ronin were causing trouble, so I tried to get out of the way. I got separated from Ikeda in the crowd, and I didn't go right back to him. Before I realized what was going on, someone started shouting at me. Ooh. He glared at me, his eyes hard and angry, and my throat tightly clenched into dryness. Ooh, harsh words. When I first met him, Sonnen had been nice, if a little quiet. After his injury, however, it was as if he'd become an entirely different man. Sonnen looked up at Hijika, walked into the room. He gave the commander a tight, weary smile, but got only a peaceful, impartial glance in return. His voice was calm and measured, but we all felt the import of his words.
Oh
my goodness. Even though each man displayed his professionalism differently, they were all clearly prepared. As they quieted down, Hijika turned towards me as if he had only just noticed my presence. Uh-oh. What? My father with someone from the West. But my father went missing in Kyoto. How would he be with someone from the West? But no one had an answer for me. Preparations for the raid began immediately. Within moments, the compound was like a beehive with soldiers and officers running back and forth. The tensions felt thick enough to cut with a knife. I found it affecting me despite my best efforts. My encounter at Masao's created some of their current headache, and I'd hoped to make up for it. Hey, can I... Oh. It became clear to me that I had very little to offer when it came to preparing for a raid. At the end of the day, all I could do was stay quietly to the side to avoid being a burden. Just then, I heard someone's voice come out of the blue.
動ける大使が足りていない。近藤さんの隊は10名で動くそう。
俺ら土方さんの隊は24人だった。大使の半分が腹痛って笑えねえよ。
Oh, that's right. There were a handful of men who were bedridden from a swift food poisoning epidemic, leaving them short-handed in battle. They planned on dividing the troops in half. Kando's troops will go to Ikeda Inn, and Hijika's troop will head to Ishoku's Inn.
そういえば、あいつらは使わないわ。夜の任務だし、うってつけだと。
Them?
お前らが減らしたけど、まだ何人か残ってるはずだ。
しばらく実戦から遠ざけるらしい。調整に手間取っていると聞いた。血に触れるたび俺たちの指示も聞かずに狂われてはたまる。
What? I swore I heard something before about a reaction to blood. This was something I was not supposed to hear. The two men hadn't realized that I was listening to their conversation, but it was crucial that I don't say anything.
Sam, 浮かばれないという表現は死んだ者に対して使うものだ。
表向きは死んだことになってるが、本当は死んじゃいないしな。むしろめったなことじゃ死なねえし。
There was no doubt that what I was hearing was not meant for my ears. I shoved my fingers into my ears and closed my eyes tightly. The best I could do was make sure I didn't hear anything else.
雪村君、こんなところで何をしているのかね。
My eyes flew open to see Kondo in front of me. I couldn't just sit there. I told him the truth, how I'd felt so useless and left my room to find some way to
な
help.
るほどな。君の気持ちはよくわかる。打ち入り前で皆も高揚しているしな。
Yes. Excited. More like bloodthirsty, to be honest.
どうかね。君も一緒に来るか。
What? That was not what I expected him to say. You mean go on a raid with you? I don't know what I could.
実は腹を壊して動けない大使が多くてな。人手が足りんのだ。伝令役になってもらえるとありがたいんだが。もちろん君に無理はさせん。
You raise a good point. Now that he mentioned it, I did remember hearing that Kando's troop only had 10 people in it. Well, alright, if I'll just be a messenger. His face split into a grin, and I found myself on the way to the Ikeda Inn to accompany their raid. Kando's presence was relieving, and his good nature gave me comfort in asking him a question. Kondo? Your uniform is different than the one your other men wear. The Shinsegumi's unique light blue uniform made it so anyone in Kyoto would recognize them. However, Kondo's uniform was white, almost cream, setting him apart from his men.
これか？暗いところに押し入った時にすぐに仲間だとわかるようにな。
I see. I didn't know the corpse uniform came in many varieties. Their usual uniform was well-fitting and the color stood out, but this white uniform was more elegant. I smiled while I looked at his uniform and I braced myself for what was to come. Hour of the Dog. After we arrived at Ikeda Inn, I was set off on several short errands nearby. I returned to hear Najikura talking to Ikeda.
こっちが当たりか。まさか長州藩邸のすぐ裏で会合とはな。
僕は最初からこっちだと思ってたけど、奴らは今までも頻繁に池田屋を使ったし。
だからって古高が捕まった晩にわざわざ普段と同じ場所で集まるか？普通は場所を変えるだろう。常識的に考えて。
Well, it kind of sounds like a trap, don't you think?
奴らには常識がなかったんだね。実際こうして池田屋で会合してるわけだし。
Najikura and Okida's conversation was very light-hearted, which didn't quite suit the subject matter. Perhaps the Chozu were trying to trick the Shinsengumi. I certainly wouldn't have known. Whatever the reason for their behavior, however, neither Najikura nor Okida seemed worried. Hisuke noticed me as I approached and jogged over.
どうだった？会津藩とか諸次第の役にまだ来てなかった。
To be honest, I didn't really see anyone nearby.
日暮れ頃にはとっくに連絡してたってのに、まだ動いてないとか何やってんだよ。
落ち着けよ、レイスケ。
The larger man smacked Hisuke playfully on the shoulder with a bark of laughter.
奴ら役に立たねえんだら来ても来なくても一緒だろ。
だけどさ、新八さん、俺らだけで突入とか無謀だと思わないの
Hisuke frowned and Takeda, who was on standby behind Hisuke, nodded in agreement.
この人数で踏み込むなど無謀にも程がある。ここは会津藩の援軍を待つべきこと。
武田君がそういうのは分かった。もう少しだけ待ってみよう。
But no matter how long we waited, the officials never came. Hour of the boar. I looked up at the sky. The moon inched itself further across the sky since we'd arrived in the Ikeda Inn.
さすがにこれはちょっと遅すぎるな。
近藤さん、どうします？これでミスミス逃がしちゃったら無様ですよ。
The chief had been quiet all this time, but when Okida addressed him, he finally stood up to
これ以
speak.
上は待て。宗司、長倉君、東堂君、俺についてきてくれ。
Okida nodded quietly but firmly.
では私は表口を固めますから皆さんご存分にどうぞ。
あ？武田さん来ないつもりかよ。いいからいいから。中が暗くて間違って切られても困るし。あ、こっちが間違って切っちゃうかも。
沖田君、それはどういうことか
まあまあ突っ込むのは気心が知れた方がいいだろう。というわけだから 武田さんは外を頼むぜ。
雪村君、少し池田屋から離れていてくれるか。ここは危険だ。老子が降りてくるかもしれん。もっとも逃がすつもりはないがな。
Alright. He stood up, smiled curtly, and ran to the inn.
会津中将お預かり老子隊新選組、戦議のため宿内を改める。
His declaration was met with a cacophony of yells. I've never heard that word before. And screams erupting from out of the inn.
わざわざ大声で討ち入りを知らせちゃうとか、すごく近藤さんらしいよね。
いいんじゃねえの。正々堂々名乗りを上げる。それが討ち入りの定石ってもんだ。
自分をわざわざ不利な状況に追い込むのが新八さんの言う定石。
Kisuke and Nagakura grinned at one another as they sauntered toward the inn.
御用改めである。手向かいすれば容赦なく切り捨てる。
Then the battle began in earnest. The yells of men and the clang of swords filled the air, rolling out through the doors and windows of the inn. I heard feet pound upwards and the screams of men dying, the wet thud of bodies dropping to the floor. Well, there was someone, but all the men who'd come with the captains ran around the back and couldn't hear Najikura. Takeda, on the other hand, was stationed outside to arrest anyone trying to flee the building. What should I do? The only person left to go help them was me. But even if I did, what could I do? That was when I heard Kondo. Najikura called out from somewhere else in the inn. Oh no. I had no desire to enter a slaughterhouse and men killing one another. Even if I did, I had no illusions about my skill with a blade. I was sure to be killed before I even drew it. But I could hardly stand around doing nothing. Perhaps if I couldn't fight, I could rescue the wounded, find them, and carry them out of the inn. I made up my mind, steeled myself, and ran inside. Inside it was pitch dark. The smell of blood hit me in the stomach like a fish, filling the air. There were dark lumps on the floor everywhere, the bodies of fallen men. There were Ikeda and Hisuke. It had sounded like a good idea at the time, but as I looked around the charnel house, I realized there was no way I could carry 2 men outside. What should I do? Where should I go? I decided I had to look for Ikeda. I knew I caused trouble for him during the news report, but he never called me out for it. It's more unfair that I try to return the favor. The Ronin came out of nowhere, falling down the stairs and screaming. My Kodachi was in my hand before I even realized I'd drawn it. Then Kondo's sword slid through his heart. I just watched a man die.
君が来たのか。あの大使は何をやってるんだ。
He did his best to act calmly, but I could tell by appearance had both surprised and worried him.
掃除を見てやってくれるか。2階にいるのは掃除と老子が1人だけだ。掃除に限って負けはせんだろうが、手傷を負うかもしれん。敵も相当の手だれだ。
Yes, sir. I nodded quickly and ran off through the carnage. He's upstairs. I took them two at a time and landed hard on the top floor. I didn't take long to spot him. There's the hubby. Boy, hello. Oh. No. Ah, shit. Yes, because it is. Only a few feet from me, Ikeda was battling a Ronin. No. I felt my stomach lurch. The cold ring of steel against steel tore through the air, and their blades flashed lines of light in the darkness. The strange Ronin eyes narrowed, and his mouth curved into a smug smile. I'd seen Ikeda train with the soldiers, and his skill with a blade had been clear, but this Ronin, the way he dodged, parried, and slowly drove Ikeda back seemed almost effortless. The blood and violence that was choking Bit in had no effect on him, it seemed. He was so peaceful, in fact, that he hardly looked like he belonged in the middle of all that carnage.
悪いけど返せないんだ。僕たちの敵には死んでもらわなくちゃ。
A smile split his face for half a second, then he launched himself at the Ronin. Their swords slammed together. To my untrained eye, it looked as though the Ronin was a self-taught swordsman. His sword moved in large, crude arcs, while Ikeda responded with skill and fitness. In a contest of skill, Ikeda would have been the clear winner, but as their blades sprang apart, it was always Ikeda who found himself pushed back. The Ronin's sword was heavy but fast. It was clear he was Ikeda's superior in raw power. The summer heat had turned the thick air and humid. The air thick and humid. I could barely breathe. Sweat poured down my spine and beaded on my face as quickly as I could wipe it off. If I distract him, he could still get hurt, but then if I look around the room, he could still get hurt. I'm in a very bad predicament. If we could hit him while his guard was down, then perhaps we might be able to escape. Once we got down the stairs, Kondo and his men would be there to back us up. I glanced around the room and then I saw him. One of the Ronin who had been struck down earlier was still alive and moving. His face was pale and waxy, but his knuckles were white with strain. As he pulled himself to his feet, sword in hand, Ikeda hadn't noticed me. Ikeda, behind you! Without even bothering to look at me, Ikeda spun around to face the half-dead Ronin.
死に損ないは黙って寝てろよ。
Even as he spoke, Ikeda's sword flickered out, slashing across the wounded man. This time, he didn't get up. A man had just died because of me, but if I hadn't said anything, then it would have been Ikeda lying still on the floor. I couldn't let that happen. There goes the God complex. The strained Ronin sword wiped through the air little more than a silver blur. Ikeda accepted the blow with the sword. However, the opponent's blow from above was too powerful. Ikeda stumbled over so slightly, but the man did not dismiss his opportunity. The Ronin foot slammed the center of Ikeda's chest. The source of his tremendous strength apparently extended to his legs as well as his sword. I heard a wet crunch as the kick connected, and Ikeda tumbled across the floor of the room. When he stopped, I saw him grip his chest and cough. Ikeda. I leapt across the room. Are you alright? His face was tight with pain. The most he could manage was labored gasps and wet, tearing coughs. Ikeda was in no condition to fight. As I struggled to move myself under his arm to lift him up, I glared at the strange Ronin. I watched the tip of his blade drift up to me. With a groan of pain, Ikeda lifted himself up and stumbled between me and the Ronin. No, Ikeda, you can't. There was a good chance he had broken bones, and if he was coughing up blood, then his internal organs could be damaged as well. He could barely stand, let alone fight, and he was making no attempts at hiding it. But he stood firm. The Ronin sneered. New flecks of blood appeared as he shouted. Stop that, you're still coughing up blood. The Ronin regarded us with cold, disinterested eyes for a few moments, then in one smooth motion lifted his sword and slid into his scabbard. What? His aloofness was amplified by the satisfaction he drew with his every word. He placed his foot out of the window, cackling to himself as he jumped through gracefully. Did he just run? No, he hadn't run. He was letting us go. Ikeda. His voice was weak. Why did you do that? Ikeda turned his head to look at me. You always said you'd kill me if I got in your way. So why had he protected me? He raised a shaky eyebrow. His words were already slurring. His eyes fluttered and his body folded as he collapsed to the floor. Huh? I've been so worried about Ikeda I hadn't noticed. The sounds of screaming men and clattering swords had disappeared. Is it over? The moment the words were out of my mouth, I heard the sound of labored footsteps on the stairs. Finally, the sun rose from the black sky. The raid itself had lasted only 2 hours, but for me, at least, it felt far longer. There had been 20 Imperial nationalists at the Ikeda Inn. The Shinzengumi had killed 7 Ronin and injured 4 more. I learned later that with the help of the Aizu domain and the Kyoto Judiciary Commissioner, they arrested 23 people. The owner of the Ikeda Inn had also been arrested for trying to help the Chozu rebels escape. The Shinzengumi had won an incredible victory, fighting against superior numbers in enemy territory, but they paid dearly for it. Ikeda had taken a blow to the chest and lost consciousness. Hisuke had been cut on the forehead, and the bleeding refused to stop. Majikura had injured his left hand. One of the Shinzengumi soldiers lost his life at the inn's near rear entrance, and 2 soldiers, why am I reading that wrong? And 2 others were severely injured there as well. It didn't seem likely that they would survive. Oh my god, yeah, I need to go to bed after this. I am reading things not right. I'm like adding words, subtracting words, and like rearranging words. So I think after this I better go to bed.
Okay.
The Kyoto military and judiciary commissioners also fought the Chozu Ronin. With their successful resolution of the Battle of Ikeda Inn, the Shinzengumi had at last made a name for themselves. It looked as though the peace in Kyoto had been protected. Never could I have imagined what the ultimate result of their victory would be. Okay, let's see, how do I save again? There we go. I gotta remember I need to press I. So I'm going to end things off here because I am horribly misreading things. It's like about to be 1:30 in the morning for me. So thank you guys for watching and stopping by, and till next time we will read more of Hakuoki Kyoto Wins. See you guys later. Bye.